Well, good morning, all. It's just as well we don't charge you for watching this show because you'd have to get half price this morning. Unfortunately, my sparring partner, Pat McCart, is indisposed, so I'm going to have to chat for a little while on my own. Uh, I think there are a number of topics I think that are worth talking about, and the most obvious one is Charlie Kirk, the young man, 31-year-old, that was shot dead in the States during a speech at a rally. Now, it's always a terrible thing when people answer words with violence. I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said assassination is the ultimate form of censorship. And I tend to agree. I mean, if you agree with someone or you don't agree with them, but when you start shooting them or beating them up, in a way that's conceding defeat. However, while Charlie Kirk had many good qualities, he was an evangelist. He was a good, clean living man. He's got a wife, children, deeply religious, and I'm sure he was sincere in what he said and did. But he was a big Trump supporter, which should ring alarm bells for many people. The fact is, due to his actions, they say millions of young people who otherwise mightn't have voted at all or might have voted Democrat voted for Trump in the presidential election. So we have Charlie Kirk in considerable measure to thank for the presence of Donald Trump on the world scene, which is not a pleasant presence. Anyway, Charlie Kirk, as I say, looks well, talks well, seemed modest, intelligent, and I'm sure he was all these things. However, today's Irish Times has a column headed Charlie Bird, Charlie Bird, uh, Charlie Kirk in his own words, which actually is the heading of the exact heading I had for a blog I did recently on my blog site. So here are some of the things they quote from Charlie during his lifetime. He said, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. He says again, if you're a WNBA, I don't know what that means, but if you're a WNBA pot-smoking black lesbian, do you get treated better than a United States Marine? I mean, that's a false comparison. He said, happening all the time in urban America, prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more. I don't think he has the evidence to support that. He says, if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder if she is there because of her excellence or is she there because affirmative action. That kind of talk doesn't impress me none, as somebody said. It's making up facts, really. This notion that blacks are prowling around and that a black woman is probably stupid or that a black pilot would necessarily be less effective than a white pilot. Those are not good things to be talking about. The other thing is, of course, Charlie was a champion for Trumpism. Now, we all know that Trump is the spokesman or advocate for the common man or woman who perhaps doesn't have much money and is finding it hard enough to get by from day to day. But Trump has plenty of money. Trump has billions upon billions of money. Charlie Kirk had not as much money as many, but he had, it is estimated, $12 million. And he lived in a house, I think it was in Arizona, which is described as palatial, and which must have cost millions. So it's another case, really, of people preaching to or saying they are on the side of, the advocate of the ordinary people who are finding it hard to get by, and they themselves are rolling in wealth. And part of that wealth was generated, in Charlie's case, by the speeches he made uh, as part of his campaign in support of Trump. Um, so there's a contradiction at the heart of things there, as there is with Trump himself, that you're mega rich and you're pretending to be the champion of the mega poor. So who else is in the news? Well, Peter Mandelson is in the news. Now, none of us, well, certainly I'm not particularly keen on Peter Mandelson ever since he was the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He clearly made himself seen as a champion of unionism. I remember talking to an editor of an Irish newspaper in the States, and he seemed to have some knowledge of Peter Mandelson, and he was caustic about him. He said he was forever claiming credit for things that he hadn't done, and one of them was that he had an important part to play in the Irish peace process. And now this man knew what he was talking about because he himself was part of the Irish peace process, deeply involved in it. And he was very dismissive of Peter Mandelson as a champion of peace and reconciliation and the end of violence in the North. But the reason he was fired was that he was up to his neck, if that's the word, up to some parts of him in terms of his friendship with Epstein, the excuse me, the pedophile. Now, he sent birthday cards. He said, "What a wonderful guy you are," to Epstein. He clearly was a close friend of his for years, and was essentially hero worshipped him. Now, when he's been asked recently, he said, "Oh no, I realize that. Yes, that's true. But I was taken in by him. If I had known these things, I find it impossible to believe that a man who was a close friend of Epstein should not have known what he was up to over the years." Mandelson is being fired for that. Now, here's something. I actually think he shouldn't have been fired for that. Many people disagree. I'm sure Pat McCarthy, if he was here, would disagree with me. But the fact is, you should be judging Peter Mandelson and everybody else on how well they do the job they're doing. His job was to be the British ambassador to America, to the US. At that, for the short time he was in the job, at that, he appeared to be pretty good in that he certainly had the hand of friendship extended to him by Trump. So that was pretty important. It's possible he could have been of great service to his country if he had stayed in post. But he was fired because of his moral dealings, shall we say, or his dealings with a man who clearly was immoral. I frankly don't believe that's fair any more than it's fair to if a guy is a footballer and is gotten a drunk driving charge. I don't think we should be saying, "Oh no, you can't play for this team anymore because you were gotten a drunk driving charge." I'm not saying drunk driving is a good thing. I think it's a terrible thing, but it's nothing to do with playing football. And like that, why was it Peter Mandelson? It has nothing to do with him and his abilities as an ambassador that he was a friend of Epstein. At least I don't see it. I don't see it. Maybe you see it differently, but I don't see it. Kier Starmer is having some bad luck. Somebody says, who was it? Bonaparte, Napoleon Bonaparte said that he didn't want good generals, he wanted lucky generals. Well, poor old Kier Starmer looks like his generals are unlucky these days. There was Mandelson, and before that there was Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, and she was got on not paying full tax on I think it was a house she had. So she was ejected. So it looks like things are turning not very well for Keir Starmer. He promised growth. That was the big slogan he used in the election campaign. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's still not happening. The growth figures that recently were announced were so small that they were hard. You'd need a magnifying glass to see what the growth was. So he's a man that's having a hard time. And I'm not a bit sad about that. I only hope that Jeremy Corbyn's your party or whatever he's calling it gets legs and gets running and is able to stand up to the likes of Nigel Farage, if in fact those are going to be the two big parties in the next general election in Britain. Certainly on the present polls, Nigel Farage's party, the Reform Party, are going to be the biggest party by far, outweighing the Tories by a mile and outweighing the Labour Party by a mile. But there is hope this fledgling party that Jeremy Corbyn's trying to set up with a woman called Sultana. Um, Whether or not that'll come to fruition, I'm not sure. But the initial signs are good, and that wouldn't that be wonderful? Because Kier Starmer at one stage was in Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, and then turned on him and with others ejected him on false grounds, of course, that he was anti-Semitic. He may have many qualities or he may have many faults, but anti-Semitism is not one of them. I think that's anybody who knows Jeremy Corbyn would know that that's the case. Now, RTE, latest word from RTE. RTE says that they will not, if Israel is invited to the Eurovision Song Contest in 2026, they will not participate. Well, woo woo is all I can say to that. I mean, for God's sake, why weren't they saying the same thing in 2025? If they had said for the song contest that passed, when was it, last May or something? They had every opportunity to stand up then and say, no, we're not going to participate if Israel's going to be in it. Or even the year before that. Certainly, I checked the figures. Certainly, if RTE had said, no, we're not going to take part in the Eurovision Song Contest, that would be at a time when 10,000 Palestinians had yet to be killed. Now, what I'm saying is between May and now, 10,000 innocent Palestinians have been killed by IDF forces of Israel. And at last, the RTE outfit are beginning to show some degree of backbone, if that's the word I want, and say, no, we're not going to take part. What kept you? What kept you? And I feel the same way about Niall Martin. He's now condemning, what's happening. What kept you? This terrible fear of Israel that you'll be called anti-Semitic. There's a difference. There is a difference. We're talking about the state of Israel and the things that the state of Israel does. And there are many, some at least, good Jewish people in all walks of life, particularly in politics, who speak out against what's happening in Israel. If you listen to Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, I mean, he makes no bones about it. He is disgusted by what's happening in the name of Jewish people living and citizens in Israel. Finally, you'll be glad to know it's finally, because I just can't keep going on not having my sparring partner here. It's like punching air. Anyway, you may or may not know that the next Irish Open Golf Championship is going to be held in Doonbeg, which is a golf course, of course, owned by Donald J. Trump. Now, I have to confess to a prejudice, and I have confessed to it earlier in a podcast with Pat. I detest golf. I've tried the game. I cannot warm to it at all. And I keep thinking of what Joe Brawley said on one of his podcasts. He says, of golf, he says, what sort of a game's that? A wee hole, and they don't even allow a goalkeeper to stop the ball getting in. But leave that sort of nonsense aside. I just find golf terribly boring. Suddenly, Mark Twain, I think, said it was a good walk spoiled. The settings for golf courses are often very beautiful, but the game itself, no, I don't take to it at all. And I think that Irish people are kind of pathetic. If it's held there, if Trump goes to makes an appearance, there will be people falling on him. I can understand people who work for the Doonbeg Golf Club. It's it's a living, but in the end you have to ask yourself, well, who's paying me, and at what price You know, thanks to Trump ultimately, Israel has been able to slaughter something like 64,000 innocent people. I think a man like that should be simply boycotted. The word boycott began in Ireland, and I think it could well apply to the present day. Okay, I can't think of anything else intelligent or even half intelligent to say about anything. If you think there's something I should say over the weekend, do let me know and I may come back again. But Pat, I'm hoping we'll be well enough to talk to us on Monday. Okay, all the best. Bye bye. Thank you.